my very good friend, now business partner, Tommy Vitor and I, when we were on the campaign in '07 and '08, he was the press secretary in Iowa. I was in Chicago most of the time, then I went on the road once in a while. We decided to keep a journal of like everything that we could, as best we could. This came from, it's funny, I hired Adam Frankel as my first speechwriter, and he had just come from working with Ted Sorensen on his memoirs. And Sorensen had not kept as good a journals as he'd like, and he told Adam, you know, tell Jon and you two, write everything down. Like, do not let these experiences go, because here I am at an old age and it's hard to remember them. So thank God for Ted Sorensen's advice, and you know, so we kept a lot of. But as we you know, started writing in the journals and reflecting on some of the stories, you know, neither of us ever wanted to do like a tell-all book about what happens in the White House or in the campaign, because I think those are kind of done, right? But we wanted to explore. There were so many funny things that happened along the way, and there were so many like pinch me moments, right, that we all had as young people in this campaign. So we thought to ourselves, you know, you have The West Wing and you have a lot of other screenplays and political dramas that explore the upper echelons of campaigns and governments, right? And presidents or characters and candidates and all that kind of, and you know, their consultants and all that. But there's not been a very good political drama or comedy that explores the young people, the lives of the young people who do this.
Especially on this campaign.
Especially on this campaign. And especially at this time. I mean, because our, you know, running thesis on this is, it's not like a bunch of people ran out to Iowa because they were wide-eyed idealists thinking they could just change the world. People understand that this is a very cynical time and this is a very cynical world. And people went into the campaign with a very realistic view of what was happening. And people had different motivations for doing so. Some were just trying to get a job. Some didn't know if they were going to do politics forever. You know, some were just going to try it out. And what we want to explore is how a lot of us that jumped on this campaign found idealism in the midst of all this cynicism. Right. So at the end of the day, being as realistic as possible, not sugarcoating all this, not making everything sound idealistic, you still found this kernel of hope in this campaign. And so, you know, whether it's a screenplay, whether it's we've been flirting with making it a television show so you can kind of tell the arc of the story out through different seasons. This is what we're exploring. So
great.
We just got to actually start writing. Yeah. There's one line that I think about a lot from Robert F. Kennedy, and it was the very famous speech the night that Martin Luther King was killed, and you know, he didn't have anything prepared. Someone gave him something. He said, "I didn't need it." He jumps up on the car and he quiets the crowd, and he gives this very moving speech. And at the very end, he pauses and he says, "We can do well in this country." And it's just a very simple sentence. There's not a lot on that, but in that sentence is kind of the entire hope of that generation who had just gone through so much in the late 60s. And you know, I always am attracted to the simpler, powerful sentences like that and sentiments, right? Like, you don't dress them up with a lot of fancy rhetoric. It's just speaking from the heart. And in the midst of all this rhetoric that you hear and all these like political lines and quotes and sound bites, sometimes you just get something that comes right from the heart, right off the top of the head, that just nails it, you know? And that for me, I always think about that when I strive to write something that, you know, am I being too flowery? Am I trying to like overreach here, or should I just keep it simple? So. I don't. I don't buy into it just because I was there, and I remember all the healthcare speeches we did, and we went all around the country, and it was just like, we said the same thing over and over. We boiled it down to the most simple thing possible. I think what you know, stops a lot of progress in Washington right now is there's a structure in Congress, and there are people who are dug in, and it is, you know, the ability of, I do think the ability of the bully pulpit to move public opinion and to move legislative action has always been a little overestimated. Not just, I don't think it's like weakened over the years. I think that from way back when, you know, we look back at history now and it's easier to say, oh, a president gave a big speech and then like civil rights happened, right? But it's always, you know, the real change happens when, you know, people demand that it happens, and when there's a groundswell, and when there's, you know. But I will say that one of the more effective things I've ever seen is right before the healthcare legislation passed, the president went to the caucus, the Democratic caucus, and with no notes whatsoever, and he gave this speech off the cuff about why they need to, you know, do this, and why this is important, and why they're going to look back on this moment as a big deal, and this is why they came into politics. And I think there's a lot of members who left that room thinking to themselves, all right, I'm going to do it. I'm gonna stand up and do it. So I do think that, you know, once in a while you can have an effect. But I think when it comes to the other party, especially when some of the people in the other party who are very entrenched, no amount of communication or rhetoric is going to change their minds.
Sure.
So. I mean, the biggest thing is to take risks and not worry about, you know, getting the best job right away. Like, start at the bottom of the ladder, and it's fine, and it's frustrating as hell for a while. But, you know, I was doing press clips at 4 in the morning, making $20,000 for a good chunk of that Kerry campaign, and life was miserable, but I was happy to be a part of it. And I thought to myself, this is the only way I'm gonna move up here. I'm just got to start here and just be happy with what I have. And then while you're in that position, you know, ask the people around you and the people you're working with to take risks. Like when I knew what my job was. I wasn't trying to reach for a job that wasn't mine or overstep my bounds, but I still talked to all the communications directors and press secretaries and speechwriters around me and said, you know, if you need help, if you need someone, an extra hand writing, I'd love to have a shot at it. I'd love to take, you know, even if it's for nothing, even if it's for my practice. Because especially for writing, the good thing there is, in a lot of different jobs and professions, it's hard to prove your talent, right? Because it's kind of a nebulous, you know, skill set. With speechwriting, you know, you have something to deliver. If you can write something well and you can prove yourself on paper, most people, when they see that, if it's good, they'll give you the chance. You know, and that's always been something that I feel blessed about with speechwriting, because, you know, a lot of other folks, some of my friends that are, you know, press secretaries and flax and stuff like that, they do amazing work every day, and they don't necessarily always get the credit because it's like the story that doesn't run, right? But for us, for writers, you know, if you write something well, someone will notice it. So. Final goal is to tell some truth about an issue that's out there, about the issue that the president has chosen to talk about, right? Because we are just inundated with so much spin and so much crap about like all the debates that go on in there, and there's, especially now that I'm outside of the White House and I've had a chance to just like glance at the news here and there, you know, there's just a lot of noise. And I think at the president's best, he has been able to cut through the noise and say something that's not like this amazing rhetorical line that, you know, is going to be etched in stone, but just something that everyone who's listening says, yeah, that's how I feel. That's exactly how I feel right now, and I believe him, and I think that he's trying to do the right thing there. And if we can get that, then that's more important than anything else for us. So we try to, you know, Barack Obama is president today because he was the most authentic candidate at a time when people had been tired of inauthenticity in politics. And so we, for many years in speechwriting, have tried to stay true to that and true to his beliefs by cutting through the easy spin and actually giving him real stuff to say. So.